Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be giving you my Gemini 2022 horoscope forecast. Well, first thing I want to get at for Gemini, as far as the Jupiter transit that's going on. I also want to first actually want to say this does apply and pertain, of course, to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Anyway, well, as far as the Jupiter transit for this for 2022, it's going to be in Pisces and Aries are the two signs Jupiter's going to traverse this year. Now, for you, Gemini, well, as far as when it's in Jupiter, okay, your 10th house is what's going to be emphasized and highlighted at this time. So in transit, you're looking at Jupiter. And Jupiter being in Pisces, and you're talking about the 10th house, it could manifest, and it could be a lot of exuberance and enthusiasm. It could be in a Pisces, like careers such as poetry, dancing, or photography, the metaphysical, which includes astrology. It could be prosperity as well. In those fields. But remember that Jupiter, as I've spoken about in previous videos, is very paradoxical. It's very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. And it might be where you might be expanding, sacrificing at this time for could be older people or the dominant parent, which is often the father or authority figures. It could just simply be at your place of business, where it might be enlarging altruistic efforts, but it could also enlarge compassion from people, 10th house related people, again, such as it could be the dominant parent, often the father, authority figures, but it could also expand responsibilities. Now, it's also, keep in mind when you have this transit, it's in Pisces, Jupiter's in Pisces. Many of you Geminis will have it squaring your Sun, Moon, or Ascendant at some point, and especially when it's squaring your Sun or Ascendant, it can be a little bit of a toll on as far as the energy level you're talking about. The Sun and the Ascendant are connected with vitality and energy. And the thing about this is that it could be where you might be over enthusiastic and idealistic, being in Pisces, to the point of being unrealistic over what you can do physically. And keep in mind that Gemini can often go and try to do a lot of different things. They can have an abundance of energy, but can wear themselves down and trying to do too many things. Gemini can often dissipate the self through lack of a integrating purpose. And when you have this Pisces energy, which can be directionless, and then you have the squaring the Gemini energy, which is going, trying to do many things, it can be a lot of chaos and trying to just simply try to do a lot of things, not necessarily finish a lot of them, and it could really be very taxing on your energy level at the same time, and also being overly unrealistic about what can be done at this time. And also keep in mind that too, when you have when you have this transit as well, it's also it's interesting that Jupiter is also about the truth, and it can be veracity, and it might be a time where you actually are finding out more what's veracious regarding it. Could something might be deceptive, excuse me, or duplicitous regarding an older person, or even the dominant parent, which is often the father or an authority figure at this time. Now, as far as Saturn goes, Saturn is going to be in Aquarius during 2022. So the 9th house is what will be emphasized and highlighted for Gemini. So at this time, it might be a time where you might be putting, it could be a lot of laborious effort, and it could be into Aquarius, like college studies. It could be doing something with, could be astrology or astronomy or computers, something with aerospace or astronomy. meteorology as some examples. It might be where it could also be hard labor. It could be for in-laws at this time, where you're expressing, doing so in a very altruistic, selfless manner, or even for foreigners, at this time as well. And also too, the ninth house is also expanding, one's horizons. So it can be where you might be doing so through doing something that could be Aquarius related, as I stated before with those examples, and it might require more effort than you think, what may be necessary. But it could also be a time too where the Saturn is connected with the father as well, and the father may be instrumental at this time. It could be in your your belief system. It could be regarding an unorthodox philosophy or belief system at this time. You may have more responsibilities in terms of religious matters. If you're involved in a religious congregation, there may be more selfless actions that are going to be involved in something of as far as religion goes at this time. It could be it's also about ninth house is also foreign travel. Remember, Saturn is connected with restrictions and limitations, and you might feel at this time where there might be some limitations and restrictions, where these things may be somewhat there may be limitations with just ninth house related matters in general at the time of this transit. And the thing about this transit as well is the fact that it's also can be about gaining structure and discipline in ninth house related matters, whether it could be could be doing something again with religion, religious congregation. It could be higher education, foreign travel. It might be matters with in-laws at this time. It can even be doing something with sports. Maybe there's something with sports at this time you might be more involved in, more so than usual. And the thing is too, when you have this kind of a transit as well, is that you got to be careful, because Saturn can also be about despondency and sorrow, and the ninth house is our beliefs and our philosophies, and not to become overly negative. And Aquarius is about our future as well, about our future, and it might impact what you want to do in terms of expanding your horizons, in terms of what you want to do going forward. The thing too is, what I want to get at as well, okay, the good thing is that the transit of Saturn, being in Aquarius, many of you Geminis will have this making a trine to your sun, moon, or ascendant at some point during this transit, during 2022. So that's very good. As far as we're taking, doing things that require hard labor and responsibilities, could be career-related matters, and having the physical energy and vitality to do so. And again, especially with the sun or the ascendant being in Gemini, because that's really strongly connected with energy. With physical energy. The moon is more, you could say, you're more emotionally up, being able to do things. But when you have, talk about the sun and the ascendant, that is more connected with one's physical vitality and energy. Now, another thing is that, Uranus is going to be, continue to be in Taurus, during this, during 2022. So the thing for Gemini is the 12th house is what's going to be emphasized and highlighted during the time of this transit. Now, this could manifest in a number of ways. You could be experiencing more disruptions in your sleep, your private life at this time. Uranus is about disruptions. 12th house can be about sleep. It's connected with the unconscious. It has a connection with that. You might be at this time too, some of you Geminis, might be also doing things that are, it could be Uranus related, in solitude or seclusion. It could be doing something, with astrology or astronomy or computers, the internet, even innovation at this time. And the fact that money, Taurus is connected with money, it might, or I say persistence, it could be doing so very persistently as well at this time. And anyway, hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now again, with Uranus and Taurus emphasizing the 12th house, at this time, as far as the transit goes during 2022, it could also be a time where you may be more inhibited in terms of, restricted and inhibited in terms of, expressing, innovative ideas. If you have new ideas, or trying to formulate new ideas for making money, it may simply be that you don't want to bring them out for some reason, or maybe you're having difficulty in coming up with those ideas at this time. And also Uranus being about friendships, they might be more hidden at this time, more so than usual. There might be restrictions and limitations and even secret sorrows associated with them. The fact that Uranus is in Taurus, it could be those friendships that might have been stable, might have been persistent, and you felt you had security with them, but they may not be there at this time. And in some cases, they might even be hidden adversaries. The 12th house is the house of hidden adversaries, so it's something to keep in mind. Now, some of you, Geminis, will have this in the 11th house at this time. And during that time, you're talking about really like the transit being in its accidental dignity. That could actually be more auspicious in terms of things that are associated with innovation or computers, things that are connected with the planet Uranus. At this time, you might be dealing with more, innovative or ingenious friendships at this time, or might have an interest in joining a Uranus-related group, which could be, again, something connected with astronomy or computers or astrology, innovation, new technology at this time. And the thing about, this is that another thing that I wanted to get at, okay, during the time, of this transit, okay, 2022, I should say, okay, Neptune is going to continue its transit in Pisces. And naturally, the 10th house is what will be emphasized and highlighted at this time. Now, the thing is, this is another thing, of course, could manifest in a multitude of ways. It could be where a dominant parent, which is often the father, may be nebulous or unclear during this. It might be something continuing during this year. You might, it could also be your career. Maybe there's something that's uncertain, or there's something nebulous or obscure regarding that. You might be dealing with more, deceptive or duplicitous people that are in, that are in your career, during this time, or authority figures. Maybe you're having to sacrifice more as far as matters connected, as far as career-related matters, working hard at this time, or maybe even sacrificing more for authority figures, the dominant parent, which is often the father, older people at this time. It may be a time to where, the 10th house is also the public image and reputation. In some cases, it can be about maybe the dissolving or dissipation of that. It can be where there might be some kind of slander, some deception, maybe affecting your public image and reputation negatively during this time. I want to be kind and rewind, because I want to say, I want to get back to something I didn't cover. Don't believe I covered earlier in this video. Is that transit Jupiter is also going to be in Aries, in addition to being in Pisces. And the fact that transit Jupiter will be in Pisces for part of 2022 for Gemini, how it may impact you. Well, the 11th house is what will be emphasized and highlighted, and that could, in some cases, it can be very fortuitous, or perhaps an Aries related goal or aspiration. It could be doing something with speech therapy, or something with welding or carpentry, or a combative sport such as karate or boxing or judo. It could be teaching that, it could be mentoring as far as that goes at this time. And remember, as I stated before, that Jupiter could be very paradoxical, could be very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. And in some cases, it might enlarge and expand, combative, contentious situations with friends and acquaintances, people that you may know in groups, clubs, or organizations at this time. But it could also be fortuitous. It could be very lucky and fortunate for perhaps if you have to confront somebody, in a group or club or organization or a friend. It might be actually lucky for that, because it can be a time when you have the opportunity to have the best results, because it can be something where you're able to address what needs to be addressed, and in a way where it might have a good resolution or outcome to it at this time. And it's also about speaking. Jupiter again is connected with the truth, and it can be some situation where you're able to be veracious and speak the truth, and do so in a very outspoken type of manner, Aries type manner, being very direct and straightforward in doing so with friends, perhaps that you wanted to call them out on something, and this could be an opportune time for you to do so at this time. And it could also be very, Jupiter is also about exuberance and enthusiasm, so it can be a time when you're very enthusiastic and exuberant in doing something Aries related, which could be a goal or aspiration, or very exuberant, enthusiastic about trying to, by being, basically having the motivation and drive to pursue goals and aspirations at this time. Go after your future. It can be very lucky for being very aggressive and going after the future at this time, Gemini, if you've had any hesitation or procrastination previously. So anyway, what I want to get at as well is that the last thing I want to get at, okay, Pluto. Now Pluto is going to, of course, remain in Capricorn during this time for Gemini. So the ninth house is what's actually the 8th house is what will be emphasized and highlighted. Now for you Geminis, you're having this transit going on in your 8th house at this time. It can be a time where, a lot of people, they get worried when, transit Pluto is actually in one's 8th house, and they become morbid and morose or overly pessimistic. It's like, oh, it may manifest in death. I had transit Pluto go through my 8th house, and I got out of it fairly unscathed. Pretty much a lot of people go through this transit, and a lot of this could just be, it could be upheavals and, with a shared resources situation. It can be in terms of getting moral support at this time. It might be you might feel that there's an obliteration of moral and emotional and monetary support at this time, or there might be an insurance related matter that might be causing some crisis with or tax related matter. Pluto is associated with insurance and taxes at this time, and you might, and that's how those are some ways that could actually manifest and pan out. Pluto is also connected with surgery, and in the 8th house, is associated. Or another way you could look at this, Pluto is associated with the colon, the prostate, the bladder, and reproductive system, and it might be a time where there might be surgery on one of those areas at this time, because the 8th house is associated with surgery. And there might also even be power struggles. Pluto's about power struggles with somebody you're in a shared resources situation with. It could be somebody that's an intimate, you might be involved in a sexual or intimate relationship with at this time as well. And sometimes, sadly, it could also manifest in the death of somebody that you're in a shared resources situation with, or it could be a sexual partner. So those are some ways that it could manifest and pan out. Now, some of you Geminis may be having, if you're having this transit in the ninth house, it could simply be the transformation of a philosophical belief or outlook at this time. The thing about this is, this is a time where Pluto is, it is connected with death, and it might even be the death of, it could be an in-law at this time, or I should say it should be, could be the death of an in-law. People wonder, well, could this indicate that it could be where I might die in a foreign country? Where, well, but by itself, it can increase that propensity to some degree. If you're somebody that's a frequent traveler, and you're going, to a lot of different countries, especially if you're an older person, yes, it may, that's how it may, it may pan out in some cases, but in most cases, not the case. Again, I've had, transit Pluto in my 8th house. I came out unscathed. There has to be a lot of times, like if you're having a question like that about death, and you got to have, I would say, other elements. There's got to be some other transits, or there might be some progressions it's accompanied with that where it could manifest, and it does. But by itself, I wouldn't say that would be okay. Well, okay, that means transit Pluto's in my 9th house. That means I'm going to die in a foreign country. That doesn't. It can increase the probability a little bit, the propensity for that a little bit, but generally, that's not I don't see that as what would happen in most cases during the transit. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.